Hello and welcome to another weird intro where I have to explain that the following podcast you're about to hear was in fact recorded on the 29th of July 2017 and is only being released at some point in March 2020. You see how vague I'm being? It's because even in the last episode I said I'd get this out quicker and I didn't. But this is it. This is the last of like the backlog of podcasts. So anything going forward in the feed here will probably maybe. Why am I making a commitment here? Right, even listen to this bit. This is I'm going to edit in a clip from the end of this episode now, and you'll hear why I am an unreliable narrator.
What'll happen is we'll just end up playing something else,
Yeah, fair enough.
or if we don't follow up on this for any reasonable length of time, then people will start second guessing. So I want to keep it a surprise.
But in
'Cause we did.
in 2 years, how will people find out whether whether or not we did anything when we record the
Well-
next podcast? Is what I mean.
Only time will tell.
Time will tell indeed, and it took 3 years, not two, to do the editing, but never mind. Let me set you up some context for the intro here. We sat down to record, we typed in split screen into iTunes, there were loads of podcasts that came up. Let's now return to 2017 to hear our conversation. Enjoy.
Apparently, the Split Screen podcast is what happens when two best friends sit down and talk. Alan Williamson, the Irish one, that's still true, and Craig Wilson, the Scottish one, are the makers of the video game culture magazine 5 out of 10. Split Screen is for everything else. I feel like some of that has aged, some of it has not. I mean, our nationalities haven't changed.
No.
I'm pretty sure we're still best friends. Makers of 5 out of 10. That's another story for another podcast.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm surprised
So
we went
the
back
last-
and updated the podcast feed. That's good.
I
Haven't put. When was the last episode?
The last episode was August 2015, so this
Jesus.
is almost the second anniversary of the last time we recorded.
Awesome.
Uh,
Well,
it's good to be back.
a lot's happened in those 2 years. Yeah.
No, I don't even know where to start.
Oh wait,
I think,
need to start with the theme tune.
Hello and welcome back to the Split Screen podcast. It has been 2 years since our last episode, and I still remember that we introduced things with hello and welcome.
There we go. Thank you. I mean, we're going to abandon any sense of format or consistency here, but I need that little hook to get me in. Otherwise,
Yeah,
I'd just be sat here scratching my arm like, it's not right.
I think if we're known for anything amongst our fans, hello Mark, hello Dave, then it's definitely our rigid adherence to consistency throughout the episodes. I like that. There's so much stuff that if you look through the iTunes feed, there's like episode 1 through whatever, and then there's split scenes, which is just some random side project. There's the time we went to the museum and just decided to record ourselves.
Yeah.
So what I think is interesting is in the time we are gone, yet more people have called their podcast Split Screen. So we have, what have we got? So if you search for Split Screen in iTunes, we still come up. I don't know if that's biased because, we uploaded those episodes, but according to my iTunes, we come up, and then you've got Split Screen, a geek podcast by SBS Pop Asia. So that's a thing. You've got the Split Screen podcast by Shah Shahid, a podcast that compares film remakes to their source material. That one.
No, that sounds quite good, actually. I might subscribe to that. That's kind of my thing.
Oh, it's about the Indian film industry in Bollywood, which is quite cool because that's something I'd really like to learn more about. I feel very ignorant about that. There is the Split Screen Games Cast with Zach Rizak and Hunter Collins, a new podcast where two childhood friends discuss anything and everything related to games in an uncensored environment. What sets us apart from the pack is our often different and opposite opinions on most topics, our ability to give unbiased and sometimes brutally honest takes on the latest gaming news. We want to offer a fresh take on podcasting by making it feel like two best buddies just sitting down and talking games together, which is exactly what we're doing. Well, I hate to break it to you guys, but you've got a long and traumatic time ahead of you. But they're pretty consistent. They're doing that every week.
Jesus, okay, that's good.
So I think probably the biggest difference is that I'm now in Australia.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant.
Brexit happened and you got kicked out to Australia, as I believe it went down.
I voted leave and took back control. Yeah, people told me to go back where I came from. That was the UK, but rather than admit when they were wrong, I decided to move halfway around the world.
Yeah. So you've been
But I think
there for about a month, 2 months.
2 months. Yeah, so I
Jesus.
moved here in the middle of May. I paid a ridiculous amount of money in order to get my stuff shipped from the UK, and I'm pretty settled. Got a job. Jess has a job. Everything's going good. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I don't know what to say. Like it's probably what you expect if you're from the UK. It's a bit warmer. People have Australian accents here, not British. uh, there are indeed kangaroos. Kangaroos down to the street. The beer is terrible. That's about it, really.
Oh, wow. Going out there.
Oh, the beer is like, I mean, you can get relatively nice sort of craft lagers and real ales, but the standard stuff you get on tap is fairly appalling. It tastes like somebody else has already digested it. It's not great.
I feel this kind of weird onus on me to like ask you questions on behalf of the audience, but like I know this. We talk.
Well,
we still Skype.
Okay,
we still chat.
Yeah, we do. I mean,
So-
I think it's a good thing to point out to the listeners that although we haven't done a podcast in 2 years, we have had conversations.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so hard doing 5 out of 10 whenever we didn't have the split screen podcast with which to converse with each other. It really made things easier.
Well, that was always the thing. I can't remember whether we ever talked about this on a podcast, but like part of our friendships always had like some creative thing. What as kind of something that becomes the primary conduit for us to actually talk back and forth. So meeting at the student newspaper, that was the thing that kind of glued us together. Then we started the split screen blog. That helped us once you moved down to Oxford. I was in Edinburgh. Then that kind of flipped around. I went down to London. You went to... No, you're still
Hold
in
on.
Oxford. No, wait.
Hold on. No, you're getting the chronology wrong. There's now like the canonical version of our friendship is and hold on, you must have moved down to New Malden before I moved to Oxford, I think.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know.
It's 2011. I mean, the chronology of the
Yeah.
friendship goes, I chap your door at a flat party. I almost set your flat on fire by leaning on the gas stove. That's the start of it for me.
I don't know. I don't remember you almost setting the flat on fire. I remember you turning up the door and me not knowing who you were, even though I just commissioned one of your pieces for the student. I remember that bit, but the setting the flat on fire, that's a new twist.
I don't know how to tell you that. Oh, yeah.
No, I need to reevaluate the whole friendship now.
No, there was a definite moment of like talking to people in the kitchen, and then I think you came in and was like, "Why do I smell gas in here?" And I was like, "Whoop, lean off the old stove there."
Oh well. Well, if we survived your attempt at arson, I think we could survive anything. But we have like I say, we had split screen, and then we also had 5 out of 10, and I think by the time of 5 out of 10, you were in Portsmouth because I travelled from Oxford to Portsmouth to make the first issue in your house,
Oh yeah.
and many digestives were consumed that evening.
See, this is the thing. There's so many steel plaques that can be erected around the UK now, charting the journey of 5 out of 10. So we can have one in Portsmouth being like the birthplace. We can have one probably on the floor of one of the flats in Edinburgh saying like, "Oh, a early conception of split screen." Conception is probably the wrong word. That draws up a different kind of image.
No, like I think conception's good, but there was you could have the I think we should have done behind the scenes for 5 out of 10, where like remember when I tried to take a photo of a guitar against a wall for the Bill Coberley piece back in the days before we'd like used stock photos for straight ourselves. There's so many things that I look back now and I think, oh, that's a terrible idea.
Well, that is one of the things, because we had before Alan left. Do you see how I'm now talking to the audience, Alan, and not you? Before Alan left to Australia, we had a going away party in Oxford, and the very good Robbie Pickles came, who is the puppet master behind 5 out of 10, pulling the strings. Or rather, the copy editor, sorry, fixing the copy. I got that wrong. That's something else he's the puppet master of. We all had a hangout in Oxford and started basically not venting, unloading, processing each of our different angles that we had on 5 out of 10. here's what it was like from the copy editor side. Here's what it was like from the designer side. Here's what it was like from the doing absolutely everything side for yourself. And we're going to do that as a podcast, or like as an episode of this, probably at some point. Now that you're kind of settled.
I think seriously that it's a good place to have a post-mortem, because the kind of people that will want to listen to that podcast. It's not something. So one of my favorite blogs is Daring Fireball, which is this Apple blog. This guy John Gruber, and it's very good if you like that kind of thing. It's very insightful. But he calls the podcast for Daring Fireball the director's cut of the website. And the thing about a podcast is it's very hard to get quoted out of context. So I feel like if we can have a proper 5 out of 10 post-mortem where you and I and Robbie and Jess get together and have a chat about it, that we can be frank, and we can give people some insight on how not to do it and how to do it, and what was fun and what was difficult. That would be better than doing a blog post. Yeah, people will get the wrong idea.
Yeah,
in the privacy of you and I having a Skype conversation with the entire internet, the 5 out of 10 mailbox has been very busy lately with emails like, now the magazine is finished, will you release it for free? Now the magazine is finished, will you release it cheaper? And the answer is, well, if you paid for it, then maybe it'd still be going. You're killing me.
Money is tight for me. Can you release the magazine for free?
Like I don't want to shit on that one guy, but yeah, it's like money's tight for me too, because money's tight for me because nobody buys the magazine.
Yes. But yes, that will come in a future episode. In the past 2 years since we last recorded, that's all happened. Magazine went from strength to strength to stopping because, oh my God, the life took over and we each both got engaged. We both then have changed jobs. You changed jobs and continent.
Yep.
I've changed jobs back in Edinburgh now, and we're both engaged, due to be married in the next few years. And then I've just bought a house. So, like, finding the time to come up with like a really clever design concept or a really nice color scheme to help pull together some article on, I don't know, how video games are taking over all aspects of your life was too real. would have hurt. That would have cut too deep. So it was a bit of a breather, I think, was needed.
And I think it's. I mean, as an executive summary of the podcast we haven't had yet in 5 out of 10.
Oh yeah,
it's totally okay. It's totally okay to have a limited run and then pass the torch. That's the right thing to do. Nothing can last forever, and it was never our day jobs. Anyway, so.
But
it's like it's no hard feelings. We haven't been defeated. We had a really good 20-issue run. We did it for nearly 4 years, like nearly 5 years, and now's the right time to move on, and that's good. That's something to celebrate. And but we'll be a lot more bitter and cynical whenever we record that full one. But we are here today because one of the advantages of giving up 5 out of 10 is that we can work in split screen again.
Yes.
Hooray!
So that's like saying I've given up heroin and I'm just going back to crack. My life's going to be turned all around.
Yeah, but there are big differences to running a regular magazine with a list of patrons and customers to running a blog, because we've always said that split screen was for us primarily, and then sort of friends and family and anybody else who gives a toss. But it is hard whenever you are a writer and you're somebody that processes your thoughts through writing and through design and infographics, whenever you're not able to process those thoughts because you're working on somebody else's.
Yeah.
And it's not working on things. I mean, I've started up Reasonably Vegan, which is obviously a vegan website. It's about our recipes and lifestyle stuff. And I still do Cast Iron with Lewis, which I think I had just started at the time we recorded the last podcast, but it's a heavy metal podcast we can put in the show notes. But these things, they take up time, but they're not cognitively draining because they're things that we want to do and we want to share.
Yeah.
And split screen is important to us because we want to share these thoughts. Like you won't believe how many video games you can play whenever you don't have to make a magazine. So, but those are games that I play and experiences that I have that I want to talk about and I want to share. And I've kind of done a few one tweet synopses of games I've played. Like I played the new Doom, I played Firewatch, and playing Max Payne 3 right now. And these are things that just were not on the radar whenever we were working on 5 out of 10. So it is something we can do in earnest, and it's something we want to do. And hopefully by the time you listen to this, the website will have unofficially relaunched. I mean, if you're listening to this, you're one of the 5 people who care about that relaunch. But it's something we want to maintain and move forward. And I think like we do seem to be pretty bad at website development historically, because the first instance of the site was on Joomla, and it was really, really difficult to maintain. Then we moved to a new theme on WordPress, and we actually paid a WordPress developer who did a very good job of trying to configure this theme to our needs. But ultimately, we were trying to shove a spoken word blog into somebody's photography portfolio site, and it made it very, very difficult to maintain every time a new version of WordPress came out. So we're now on something that is really easy and standardized, and that means we can publish from apps on phones. We can do things more quickly. We're not fighting to do stuff like hook up RSS feeds behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I think we've reduced a lot of the friction, and then it's just whenever we get the chance to write, whether that's on a lunch break or a train journey or a lazy weekend. So I'm hopeful that we can keep going, and that it's worth doing. And the few people that care about these things, great. Let's talk about it. You can just about hit me up on Twitter. I'm not very active on it anymore because I don't need to shill for a magazine. But you can still reach out. But I think writing has changed so much. Like since we started Split Screen, since we started 5 out of 10, the entire landscape has totally changed. We've gone to this peak of people paying for writing, and then nobody paying for writing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many. Again, I feel like I want to save some of this for that 5 out of 10 cast, but there's so many other little magazines, independent magazines, endeavors, blogs, websites that set up to pay folk that have risen and fallen, and we were kind of kept trucking on, but it was only through sheer, the strength of willpower by the end. But yeah, the way I consume games has kind of changed as well. I think way early on, I was, before streaming had really taken hold, and before Twitch, I was always dabbling in that. I always kind of found that really engrossing, and actually I liked very kind of analytic features or deep dive interviews with developers. I like that kind of thing, but that drifted away from just the general previews, news, reviews. And now I've kind of come back actually, and I've reinstated my RSS feeder on my phone, and I'm actually reading through like IGN and Kotaku and big gamey blog sites that I used to avoid like the plague. I read them all the time now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of gone back to just like, actually, I don't know. I think I just needed like a 5-year break from all of that.
But you were the person that showed me Justin TV before that became Twitch.
Yeah.
And I remember like you thought it was very cool. I thought it was less cool than you, but still at least interesting enough to show me. But you've always been into video. I know that weird YouTube esoterica. Like I don't listen to any games podcasts because I don't really care about the news. I basically log into Eurogamer once a day, and I only browse the stories that interest me. It's not an RSS because I don't read 80% of the stuff. Most of my things are on YouTube now, so I'll just flick through. I've got a couple of things like, I don't know, Digital Foundry and Jimquisition, Game Maker's Toolkit, and then Mark Brown. If you back him on Patreon, he does a monthly sort of reading and viewing list. So I queue up loads of those articles into Instapaper and into my YouTube watch later queue.
Yeah.
And most of my stuff's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's the same here actually.
So trying to do like a print magazine or a print blog whenever you don't read much is futile at best.
But yeah, so one of the other things that we've talked about doing in the past but never had the time to, and now it looks like we actually have the time to, is to do a kind of game club, book club way of getting through the pile of shame. And migrating all the old articles onto the new theme, it turns out every couple of years we tend to post something along the lines of, my God, I own too many games. I should stop buying games and play the games I own. And then I typically fail on that front and just go crazy on a Steam sale. And I'm like, 60 pence, that's cheaper than a sandwich. Sure, I'll buy 10 of them.
And then one day you look around the back of your kitchen and there's like 200 rotting sandwiches falling out of the plastic wrapper.
Yeah.
You're like when it comes to playing Pile of Shame games, you're like a spurned lover promising you'll change. But it would be good to do that. And now I actually you've got a good gaming PC, so you're not playing in that dilapidated Toshiba laptop.
No.
I'm not desperately trying to make video games work on a MacBook Pro. So we do have a facility in which to play games. Now, a lot of other people would do a game club, and they would say, we're going to play this, and then we'll have a discussion about it and see what you all thought. We don't care about that. We don't care. It's just you and me.
That's moving back towards like a magazine deadline and an audience and expectations and an onus. That's like bringing all that baggage back in that we don't really want to tap into here.
I think that's pretty much it. We just want to play in our own time. But we do have a large pile of video games. We've been through our Steam libraries with a fine-toothed comb. And then we're going to start playing through some of those games. And then we're going to start talking about those experiences. Because I had 2 months of unemployment, so I played a fuck ton of games. It's amazing how many games you can get played and you don't have any responsibilities, Every shower you don't have is another 10 minutes of gaming fun.
Oh wow! Okay, that's a pungent metaphor right there.
The thing with the Pile of Shame is that there is a shame attached, right? People are like, oh, with so many games to play, just bought 10 games. I don't like doing that. I actually want to play these things. Like there are games like there's even games we're probably not going to discuss, like Red Dead Redemption, which you played many years ago and wrote a review of, that I picked up for like a $5 in CEX when I finally traded in my Rock Band kit. Those are games that I want to play and want to understand. So part of this podcast, because there is a theme, believe it or not, even though we've been going for about 20 minutes, this episode was thinking about, we talked before on the phone about the idea of, what was it you said, sort of broadening your gaming knowledge.
So when we were looking through the kind of games that we have together, I pointed out that I've categorized out all the games in my Steam library by games that I'm currently playing right now, some games that I've started that I'll want to finish, a bunch of games that I just got for free, and then there's one category in the middle which I've just called gaming literacy. And I think that kind of piqued your interest on what does it mean for why I think do you feel like a certain onus as well? Because I'll explain it from my point of view, right? These are sort of games that I've come into ownership through either a humble bundle, or again, it's been cheaper than a sandwich, which is generally the measuring stick that I take to these things. And I've picked up these games and went, right, what's a good example of one? Jet Set Radio, right? I have no burning desire to go and jet set that radio, but I feel a certain onus to play it, to kind of understand, because I know that I've seen it being referenced in other games as like being influential. Though, God, there was one of the launch titles on Xbox One where you kind of seem to grind around on high wires and
Sunset Overdrive.
Yeah, so Sunset Overdrive looked kind of appealing, and I remember reading like certain comparisons to Jet Set Radio in that. And so it's like, I guess I kind of want to do that to broaden it. Do you feel that kind of way with games?
I don't know. I think there's a problem that the games that we play in our childhood, we put an undue emphasis on it, and then whenever we think about what are really important games, you just end up listing games you played as a kid were important to you. Mm-hmm. And so I think this idea of gaming literacy is it's always tainted. So an example of a game like that I don't think is worth playing, but a lot of people would put in their list, is Final Fantasy VII. And I've put a few hours into it, and I just think this is just boring.
Well, thanks, Alan. We've just lost half our listenership as Dave's just turned off the podcast.
Hey, come back, Dave. I love Chrono Trigger. Do you like that one? But I think it's very difficult, because I could be like, well, if you want to improve your gaming literacy, you've got to play at least one Sonic the Hedgehog game. Whereas a lot of people would don't even bother. And I find it really hard to separate, what's influential and what's merely critically acclaimed. So, for example, a lot of people might have said, a month after it came out, that BioShock Infinite was a really important game.
Yeah.
A couple of years later, don't think anybody's really going to be saying that. They'll be like, oh my God, just play the original. So I think these things change all the time. But I think it's interesting, worth exploring. Like, if you wanted to know more about video games, if you wanted to broaden your palette, then what kind of things should we be looking at? And then they kind of I'll ask you the question now, but you don't have to answer me until the end of the show because I've already thought of the question. Is if you had somebody who'd never played a game before in their life, what game would you put in front of them first?
Ah. See, that's
See,
interesting. That's good. I was thinking about this from the point of view if you had to introduce someone to the world of professional wrestling, like how would you do that? Like what storyline would you take them through, or would you go with a certain wrestler? Do you just go fuck it, just watch Undertaker, Shawn Michaels series? So many options. But that's quite an interesting one for games. So what? Someone who's never played or never really.
Just I think somebody who's got a healthy curiosity in the medium, but really doesn't know where to start.
Yeah.
What game would you put in front of them? And I think it's interesting because there's a lot of different ways of approaching that.
I think actually in terms of then how I would introduce someone to games, I'd probably hopefully start. I would start by trying to understand like what experiences in their other passions. Sorry, in terms of their other hobbies, what experience is it that they actually enjoy? So like that, if they enjoy like, I don't know, mountain biking or something like that, then okay, well, what's the experience that you get from mountain biking? Maybe it's the quick decision making, the thrill of going down. Okay, well, that kind of conjures up a whole bunch of games that you can take them down, like you say, the Call of Duty route or Destiny or like
it could be your shooters, could be
game.
Like you
could
extreme
find
sports games, Mirror's Edge, this kind of thing.
Yeah, literally find a video game equivalent. There'll be like BMX games out there. There's the old Dave Mirra series where you can totally
a very accurate simulation.
Yeah, the verisimilitude was so high as you mountain biked your way across telegraph wires.
But
telephone wires.
The analogy could be something like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, where it's an exciting thing. There's a bit of performance involved in there. It's about overcoming challenges and improving your skills. And some people just like. So other people like to ride bikes. They like to just go out for a joyride, and they want to appreciate the sights in the same way people go for walks and stuff. And so you can introduce them to a game like Proteus. That's a nice game. You get to go for a walk, and you get to see nice things. Sometimes there's a bit of history to it. Sometimes there's not.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way of explaining it. And then if somebody just sort of turns up their nose and goes, video games, where do you waste your time with those? You should just walk away from that person as far as possible because they are not as cultured as you.
Well, no, but that's where I think actually you walk towards them. You get right in their face and you say, you look at them dead in the eyes and you go, tell me what you love. And then you find out what they love. And
I am dead inside. I am a husk.
Ask me about my kill death ratio.
No.
But yeah, you hopefully find some. I guess I'm saying kind of you find some common ground and maybe explore it that way. But certainly for introducing someone to games who hasn't played it before, I wouldn't want to go down the, like you say, think of what games are like important and like historically important. So you don't just go like, okay, well here's your. Although Tetris, I think, is probably the most universally loved game ever. You don't just say, all right, I'm going to line up a playlist for you of Tetris, Pac-Man, Mario, Sonic, Tomb Raider.
Namco in 1982 came out with a Pac-Man. A rousing tale. It really roused the arcades. It was $500 million. So it's very important. I don't know why I'm miming smoking a cigar. Nobody's actually going to be able to hear that. Tetris is so interesting because whenever I thought about this question earlier today, I was like, the game would not be Tetris. And the reason why I think it wouldn't be Tetris is because it's not representative of what games are today. So let's reframe this in terms of if I were to say to you, what is a movie? If you were trying to explain to somebody what movies are like, you wouldn't show them Citizen Kane necessarily. You wouldn't show them something like, I don't know, On the Waterfront or some kind of early seminal thing that everybody agrees is really good, right? And the reason why you wouldn't do it because it doesn't really represent what it's like to actually enjoy that today. So if you wanted somebody to be a movie lover, you're not going to show them you're not going to show like Battleship Potemkin or some silent movie from the 1920s or Metropolis or something like that because it'd be a good movie. And if they liked it, I might get them in the film. But it doesn't explain what it's like in the here and now.
Oh, you can't say it, but I've taken my gloves off because I totally disagree with that. So like because I think what your argument hinges on there is like the subjectiveness of what does it mean to see a film today. Like how would you answer that question then? So what is it? What does it mean to you?
I think the current culture around video games is a bit like going to the movies to see a Hollywood blockbuster, and that is part of the reason why um, things like 5 out of 10 didn't get as much traction as we'd have liked it to, because there is a big there's still a big AAA gaming culture. Whereas what I find really interesting with games are the kind of double A games with a smaller budget and more creativity and less to lose. If you looked at what are most people playing, what's getting the most revenue, what's getting the critical acclaim, I think a good example of it is something like Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah.
Or something like Destiny or Call of Duty or any of those big shooters. So if you wanted to say to somebody what is a representative movie of the current Hollywood experience, I think it's going to have to be something like The Avengers, some kind of Marvel movie. That's what it's like going to the cinema these days. It's one of these bombastic, serialized, explodey-tastic movies that are high on CG and low on human emotion. Now, is that the kind of movie I enjoy watching? No, absolutely not.
So yeah, there's this kind of subtle difference there, right? Because you're saying because by going to the movies, if you mean literally just when you go to a cinema, yeah, you're largely going to get that popcorn entertainment films, right? Take you away for a while, thrill you, excite you. That's that's probably the bulk of those things. If you were to measure of all the films that came out this year in cinema, most of them would fit that category. If you went, well, show me most of the films that came out in the UK, were produced in the UK, came out I don't know, single screen showings in places, or straight to online, or straight to DVD or some other format. You probably see a lot of different other genres. So again, that's where I come back to that, I guess, what does it mean when you say what's the typical movie like now? You could either go by the number of releases that fit that type of category, or do you go by the money that they make? Because if you're absolutely right for games, right? The games that make the big bucks are ones that play it what we would term pretty safe. I can't think of a game that's been safe. Yeah. A runaway success that was very surprising, probably other than Portal, but I think Portal's that weird itch.
But the nav of Portal was very safe. But Portal was bundled in a compilation with one of the most critically acclaimed video games of all time. So actually, I think that was the safety by stealth.
Yeah,
I think because nobody paid for it individually. Something.
And I don't want to kind of leave that point just to say that those games are bad, because I'm playing through Fallout 4 right now, and I'm having having a gay old time with it. It's great. Same, Fallout 3 is probably one of my favorite games, and those are very much, if you were to look within the Fallout series, there was huge online outcry from very passionate fans that Bethesda were going to do exactly that, take a very specific genre piece and then open it up to the masses, and as if that's a bad thing.
I think there are a couple of games that have been sleeper hits while being subversive. It's probably things like Dark Souls, Undertale, Stardew Valley. Those kind of games that were weird in a different way. Dark Souls being so hard it basically spawned its own subgenre. Something like Undertale is a really relatable human emotional story. I think you probably draw an analogy between Dark Souls and something like the Paranormal Activity movies that are weird and different, sort of spawned their own genre of found footage horror. There's not well, you know what I mean, found footage, that kind of camera in a room trickery. And one of the things that if you look at Hollywood blockbusters, you forget all of the Blumhouse production stuff. It's these shoestring budget, generally horror movies.
Yeah,
which are actually massively successful.
I mean, one of the things we've not touched on here is, the barrier that exists with games, as opposed to if you're introducing someone into movies or the wonderful world of professional wrestling, is the fact that you have to put the controller in their hands. And so there is then there is a skill for, I'd say, the majority of games that you need to learn how to play them in order to even get to the enjoyment part or the satisfaction part. It's really interesting when you say about Dark Souls, because I would say one of the key reasons why that took off in such a way has to be because of all the streaming that was done. because there's been brutally hard games forever. And
Yeah.
on the side of from the old games which were just designed to be brutally hard to get money out of you, to broken ones, to then a lot of the indie French games like I Want to Be the Boss, which are designed purely to trick and deceive you and require frame perfect precision in your jumping. I think one of the reasons Dark Souls took off is because streamers were able to play it, and you then get proof that it can be beaten, right? So it isn't unfair, it's just brutally fair in what it does. And the second thing that you get some of that enjoyment of watching someone else play it and their reactions and their what's going to happen next. You get to see some of their logic, so you get some of the enjoyment without having to go past that barrier of learn how to play the game yourself. And I definitely know I've done that for a game like StarCraft 2, which is, if I had to make a list of like buyer's remorse, StarCraft 2 is up there for me, because I bought that thing in the first week it came out for 45 Great British pounds, and I've played probably about like 10 to 20 hours off it, but over the course of what must be about 4 years, so not very much. Very, very
that's
rarely.
Not bad. That's like £2 an hour. Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's cheaper than parking in most parts of the city, so it's like well worth it.
Cheaper than Edinburgh parking, and arguably more exciting.
But the reason I jumped into that purchase was because I was watching a lot of the StarCraft 2 professional games and streamers and commentators, and they gave me the enjoyment of the game and like some understanding of like the strategies in it, without having to actually learn like, oh shit, what button do I press now? Oh, why can't I zoom out? Oh fuck, I've pressed, oh, I'm dead. And that's kind of so actually, if I was introducing someone to games, I would probably, start with looking at what kind of passions do they currently have, to try, say, pick a type of game. Is it a, fighting game, sports game, action, whatever. So something thematic, like the material content of it. But I wouldn't probably discount now. I like taking watch this other person play that game, to get them over that hurdle of having to learn how to do it.
So can I backpedal a bit to the Dark Souls comment you made? Because I don't want to take your argument out of context, but I'm pretty sure I disagree with it. So what you were saying with Dark Souls is, do you think one of the main reasons that took off and reached critical mass was because of the advent of streaming, and because people rallied around watching people beat it and knowing that it was possible?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was the reason why it took off. Now, I haven't played a lot of it, but I've read more than I'd care to, and I don't want to turn into Dark Souls, the podcast, because nobody stops fucking talking about it. But I think the reason that it took off was because it tapped into a growing sentiment among video game players that games were becoming too easy. And when you think about the time when it came out, it was 2010, 2011. And you had the Wii, so you had people playing Wii Sports. You had Nintendo introducing the Super Guide with New Super Mario Brothers. And you had this growing culture of games becoming a bit more casual, a bit easier, a bit more auto-aiming and console-friendly. And I think what Dark Souls did is it made games really hard again, and it created a really high barrier to entry. So you could give someone a controller, you could say, here's The Walking Dead, play through this. And even if they were pretty inept, they could get through most of it. There's a couple of bits where you need some kind of reaction times, but it's they're few and far between. But if you had somebody a controller and say this is Dark Souls, they're fucked. They're just not going to be able to do it. And I think people like that. I think they like the elitism. This is where the whole thing of the get good comes at. This whole meme of people having to get better at games. What people like about watching the streamers, it's not that they like watching people stream it. They like that it requires a really high level of technical skill to beat.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of gamers, in inverted commas, like that community is becoming more insular again. They like that.
So what you think it's a kind of I think badge of pride type of thing.
Absolutely. I think like the whole one bro culture and stuff. Yeah, there's a personal satisfaction of that, and that's the kind of thing I would enjoy from it. I like games that are hard. Like I like playing like the new Doom, and obviously I'm a massive Bayonetta fan, and I like games that let you in at an easy level, but there's a solid learning curve where you can get better and improve, and you can enjoy that mastery. But I think a lot of people liked that it was fundamentally hard, and that's why you get the resistance. People go, oh, there shouldn't be an easy mode in Dark Souls, or it's not the same. You won't enjoy it the same way. And it's just saying is that's the way I enjoy it. But I think there's a real element of gatekeeping to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the interesting things. How would you introduce people to games? If you think about the games that are popular right now, streaming, you've got stuff. I think with the one exception being Overwatch, games like Counter-Strike, StarCraft 2, Dota 2, Street Fighter 5. What do all those games have in common? They have a very high level of skill to be able to play it with other people competitively. Something like Dota 2 takes thousands of hours. The reason people like watching people stream those games is because they're too hard to play. Like the reason you like watching people stream StarCraft 2 is because you could never be that good. Like there's no way I could ever play StarCraft 2 at that level.
Yes,
I think if you want to explain to people what games are like today, you've got to explain that like for a lot of people in that community, I think it's possibly not a majority, but certainly a sizable portion. It is about skill and competition and improvement.
Yeah,
that is intrinsically part of gaming from the early days in which people were getting high scores in arcade games and they were beating tough games. Like that's one of the reasons I like watching speedruns, because I like watching people who are incredibly good at games. It's cool, like superhuman feats doing things I could never do. I find that good, but what I also like about speedrunning is it's not as directly competitive. So watching people beating each other's... When people speedrun, they generally do it to beat their own personal goals. I think the stuff of trying to beat other people is secondary. And they're generally learning other techniques that, like if you learn a new glitch in a game, it helps everybody out, and then everybody lowers their time, and that's fun. That's a positive kind of competitive community. I like video games and I like board games, like Catan and Carcassonne, where you don't have to fuck somebody over to win. Mm-hmm. I like where you're all kind of competing, but you're also cooperating at the same time. I like that's the kind of stuff I love. But like Left 4 Dead, like fundamentally like the cooperation better than getting the most kills at the end of the round. But it's a bit of both.
Yeah, it's I mean the speedrunning side. If there was like an article that it's probably one of the articles that I hoped we'd have covered in 5 out of 10 at some point, but never really came up, was just that speedrun community, because it's so interesting, that dynamic of it's so competitive but so ultra cooperative and building on all of their each competitor's work or each runner's work.
But we never did. We're not doing another issue.
No, we're not.
Let it go. Let it go.
But yeah, so if you were saying then Dark Souls is part of that success, it tapped into that wanting to be games to be harder, the kind of badge of pride of completing it, exclusiveness, that kind of thing. How that needs to spread somehow, right? Like that word of mouth needs to spread that, okay, we've waited and the Messiah has now returned and his name is Dark Souls, and oh look, you're dead now. That's why I attribute some of that to streaming. I think we could both be right in this scenario where
no. Like it's called split screen, not shared screen. One is right and one is wrong. We've always run this rigid debate structure for the past 6 years. I think that's true. But okay, so one of the ways we can look at
listeners come to the website and don't comment, because we don't have comments enabled. So don't tell us.
Absolutely, don't comment. Just hit us up on Twitter. I don't know. Don't comment. Comments suck. That's one thing that'll never change. Yeah. So one of the ways you can see the influence of Dark Souls is in the new Legend of Zelda game, Breath of the Wild, which unless I don't know, something changes dramatically, is probably going to be the best game I've played in 2017. And that is a game that is pretty heavily influenced by Dark Souls because it's hard as fuck. Mm-hmm. But Nintendo are not quite as friendly at like streaming compared to something like the PS4 or the Xbox One or the PC, where you can stream relatively easily. The Switch lets you really just share screenshots, so people you can just plug an HDMI cable into a dock and you're streaming. Mm-hmm. But I think Breath of the Wild is probably a good example of how we are both right. That people wanted a Zelda game that was hard and didn't just lead you everywhere you wanted to go, but also there's this idea of a shared sense of discovery and everybody exploring this world together and finding new things. One of the things we didn't talk about in Dark Souls was that the messages you can leave and the way it works with online functionality.
That's true.
So people, and that's not a streaming thing, but streaming is like one facet of a community collaborating to uncover secrets.
That's fair. Did you see there was actually an interaction on Twitter between? Oh, not actually. It wasn't quite an interaction. Someone had tweeted the From Software guys who are a team who have made the Dark Souls series, and said like, "Oh, looks like the Breath of the Wild Zelda team have taken a little bit of inspiration from you," and From Software responded like, "I think everyone's taken inspiration from Nintendo-san." At some point. So let's keep this in check. But yeah, you're right.
But actually, when the Breath of the Wild team said that, a lot of inspiration from them came from the original Legend of Zelda, which is a really hard game. And then sort of people go, "Who was Zelda? The Dark Souls of 1985." Yeah. But it originally was a hard game that softened over time.
Breath of the Wild would be a decent kind of first game to show someone. It's got it's quite a good on ramp. So it doesn't have the brutal cliff edge of Dark Souls to overcome.
I don't know. It's have you how much of this have you played?
Only as much as Dave has when you brought over his Switch, so a wee bit.
I mean, I would describe Breath of the Wild as a lovely game until you turn the wrong corner, and then someone will kick you so hard you'll shit out your own teeth. Like it's really quite tough.
Right, fair enough. So in terms of introducing some to first games, find some kind of passion or genre. Second facet would be, look to streaming or showing other people how here's what enjoyment can lie at the end of the trail if you push through and you can get to it.
So I'm not sure. I had an answer to the first game I would show people, but I don't know, because Breath of the Wild was a really good answer. So the game I had in mind, and I've got a bit of explanation. The game I had in mind was The Last of Us.
Okay.
And so the reason that I thought that would be a good way to introduce people to to what a modern game can be is I think it embraces a lot of good things, which is it's got a really rich story. It's got a good amount of interactivity that assists in telling that story. It's got pretty high production values. It's mechanically interesting, and it's pretty well polished. So I think it's an example of a good game where if you wanted to say to people, here's why I like these things, that would be good, because you could basically say, like, it's like a movie, but you're the director and you get to choose to an extent how the story unfolds. That's what makes it interesting, because you're actively engaged in it. That's what makes it exciting and intense, and that's what makes the stories more, emotionally resonant. Because I think anybody who's said, what are these video game things I hear so much about, it's probably going to be somebody that cares about art in general.
Right.
They're probably not going to be somebody who goes, books, they're for wankers, cinema, what a load of pish. But these video games, I hear they're good. Tell me more. So I think that's a fair assumption to make.
Mm-hmm. So you're kind of looking for...
What do you think of that as a starter for 10?
I'm surprised by that answer, actually. I don't think I would have guessed that one from you. Although I don't know you really enjoyed the game. I guess, all right, so when you're saying, like, what is the kind of modern video game that you would show? Yeah, it's pretty much your kind of quintessential, strong, we often say AAA game. It's your third person. It's got good voice acting in it. So if you're into movies, there's a common language that it uses from film.
It's got, what do you call him? Troy Baker, one of the... They only two voice actors you're allowed. The other one's Nolan North. So.
Yeah. So I need to see, like, there must be a good feature that someone's done on why that is. Like, what exactly is it that these guys are bringing to the table or the recording process that they're not, that others aren't? Or maybe it's just that these are the two names that we all know, and that's kind of self-perpetuating it. Anyway, put that.
I think they're probably dependable characters, because people know they're good for games, and also they don't seem to be involved in any union activities, which makes it easier to hire them.
Yeah. I guess for The Last of Us, it's hard to I'm finding it hard to distance myself from my own bias, because it's a game that I don't have any interest in playing.
Have you not played it?
No, and I have no interest in playing.
What?
Yeah, because it looks.
Why not?
So...
Okay, so why aren't you interested in playing it?
It's like every other third-person action game.
That's why it's the quintessential game, because it's got fucking zombies in it.
But like, this is it. Like, if you want to introduce someone to games, are you trying to go for the most average of average? In which case, sure. Nah, I'm only joking. I'm not being that damning. But if
I was gonna say, I don't think it's like you shouldn't
But are
damn
you-
it
are you
until
trying to-
definitely don't knock it until you've tried it.
I've watched someone play through some of it, and it didn't grab
Oh,
me.
come on. Come on.
There was a lot of walking around and then cover-based shooting. Come on. We've all played Gears of War.
There's a bit of,
We've all been there.
okay, this is like I think you've put so many arguments out there in the space of 10 seconds that I can't possibly respond to all of them.
Come on.
Yeah, you should play it.
Yeah, I can see where it would be appealing, or why it would be a good intro, right? But like, why would you? I guess my question would be like, why would you choose like Last of Us and not Uncharted or not, Assassin's Creed or not Shadow of Mordor? Because I kind of lump all of them together.
So, I think Uncharted would be an okay one to choose. But I think the problem with Uncharted is it's really just it's just a lot of shooting and a bit of jumping.
Right.
I think what's interesting about like what The Last of Us does better is it is more of a story to tell, and it's more about those characters, and I think that might be a bit more approachable. I wouldn't choose Assassin's Creed or Shadow of Mordor because I think Assassin's Creed bore everybody to death with its own lore, and Shadow of Mordor would be a bit too obtuse and gamey.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I think the best way to introduce people to games would be say they're like films but different in some ways. Here's the ways in which they're different. So it's a good lens through which to understand them. It's not the perfect way, but I think it'd be a good intro. People could at least appreciate what's going on. Then you could say, some games are a bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
Some games are like Walking Dead, where it's more about the dialogue and the story. Some games are more about the mechanical bits you've played. Other games don't have as high production values. Blah 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 blah. So I think for those reasons, I thought it'd be a good starting point. I feel like everybody can at least appreciate that. It's sufficiently mature in terms of the story and the systems and the art direction and stuff where nobody's going to feel like it's a bit hokey or silly.
Mm-hmm. So that works if because we're assuming we've made a lot of references to film and movies here, right? So if you've got a movie fan, that's probably going to work. If they don't enjoy watching films, then that wouldn't work as well. And so, what other games could you choose? I mean, if you wanted, like, if I had someone who was like a voracious reader, I'd be more inclined to put something like Device 6 in front of them. Yeah, or like and there's a new I'm playing through Stories Untold, which the very good friend of Split Screen, Rick Lane, bought me recently, and it is just a series of interactive fiction games, but with a little bit of a graphical setting to it, kind of sound to it, so it's adding a bit more dimensions. But it's absolutely just text-based gaming, and it is like engrossing and thrilling at points without needing to have high production values or voice acting or any of that jazz.
I think if somebody was a voracious reader, I'd probably get them to play 80 Days.
Yeah, there's games like that which kind of show you, well, here's the branching paths, basically, or largely, that open up to you in the world of gaming that you don't necessarily get on a printed page. It's a very broad topic.
Oh yeah, well that's why it's
one.
interesting. Because I think it's a good way to approach the idea of gaming literacy. Because you can think more about what are the various aspects that make up video games.
Yeah.
Like should you make people grind at Dark Souls until they complete it, or should you play I don't know, Baldur's Gate instead? What would be a good way to improve your critical faculties? I think that's why it's such an interesting question. Whenever we look through the pile of shame, we're like, well, which you were going to play and which you were not going to play. It's like I just finished playing Guacamelee quite recently. It's like, was that a fun game that ticked a lot of the boxes for me? It's basically a Metroidvania with a bit of side-scrolling beat 'em up. Yes, it was fun. Would I recommend it to everybody to go and play it to, quote, improve their gaming literacy, unquote? No, probably don't think I would.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it does anything, like it's I don't want to call it workmanlike because that's cruel. But I think it's really visually interesting and fun to play. But I don't necessarily I would miss out a lot if I never had that in my life.
Yeah. I suppose for me, when it comes to what's interesting about like that gaming literacy, and as I said, it's a good question because it's a very broad topic. I'm interested in exploring how broad it is. So like I want to kind of know what are like the extremes that things can go to. So we've talked about like graphics, right? So you can go to the hyper realistic stuff that's coming out of like the new Unreal Engine, with like incredibly photorealistic, all the way back down to the fact that I'm starting to play Dwarf Fortress now, which is just text-based ASCII art. Like, I would be interested in showing folk like, well, that's the one of the dimensions, look how broad that range is. And then you can go from like how interactive something is. There's some games that you just sit down and they kind of play themselves, like Heavy Rain. Yes, you're making small decisions and you are guiding the story a bit, but the story that's being told for you is very much the story that's going to be told for everyone. And then I would want to show someone a game like, say, Kentucky Route Zero, which it has like a surprisingly broad range of kind of choice and consequence narratively in it. So I kind of want to like bounce around a lot and explore the whole space. That's kind of what I'm after for myself. And so some of the games that we've picked on here, like Uplink, right? I've not really played a game which is so UI based, if that makes sense, right? So
Yeah,
there's no characters on the screen.
I find myself hunching over the screen when I play that because I'm worried the FBI are going to kick the door in. I think it works. I think it only works really well like on a laptop. Whenever you feel like you're actually typing into stuff, it works so well because like it'd be shit on a console on a big TV. Uplink works because it's like you're doing exactly what that person would be doing in real life. You're not a tennis player through the medium of a keyboard. You're using the same tools as the hacker. That's why it works. That's why it works so well, I think.
Yeah, of course, her story is like a natural complement to that. That I would probably have in there as that list of early games to show people, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, there's other games that I've got in the list, like World of Warcraft, which I've tried before. We did a couple series of
a whole week of that,
probably like 7 or 8 years ago. And it's still something that I always intrigued to come back to go, right, I still don't really see it in the way that all these other people seem to see it. So, not that it's like I must understand, like I need to know what they do, but I'm kind of tempted to give it another try and say, right, is there just a different angle that I could play this and I'll get some enjoyment from it?
I think I'll need to see if we can get Jess onto an episode because she'd be the exact person to talk to about World of Warcraft because she was a midnight launch. Yeah. That was the game she played, for many years. And we did play it. Well, she played it for a couple of weeks in Oxford as a way to sort of catch up with her friends. So she would know a lot more about it than me. So I'm not going to presume anything or put words in her mouth. And
that aspect of playing with friends is absolutely something that I've not done. Like I did it very briefly with you, like one evening, if you remember, like in your flat in Edinburgh, we
I remember.
But I think I had like whatever trial accounts at that point, so you couldn't really communicate in the game. You couldn't really interact. You just kind of saw the avatar running about killing wolves.
For wolves, I definitely wouldn't be doing that now. It's the most un-vegan thing I could think of. Running around the countryside, beating wolves to death.
Yeah, but then
kicking turtles.
There's other games then in my gaming literacy which are more about trying to fill like historical gaps or like trace the inspiration. So I've got the System Shock series. I'm a big fan of BioShock. We talked about BioShock Infinite earlier. I'm kind of always like doing this in music to kind of trace the inspiration back through different artists and kind of see, okay, because I'm a huge fan of John Frusciante. He was like hugely influenced by Jimi Hendrix, and then I was like, okay, listen to him, then go back through like, well, who's Jimi Hendrix influenced by, and then kind of trace back and see like, well, what carried over through that line and what was the different aspect that each of them brought. Like I find that interesting, and I kind of want to do that in certain game series, and hence why System Shock is on that list. Same with the first Half-Life.
System Shock 2 is definitely in the pile of shame. First Half-Life or Half-Life 2? First Half-Life?
First Half-Life. Played like chunks of it,
but think it's really good.
Never from start to end.
I think it's worth going back to. Man, I recently replayed Quake and Quake 2. I think the first Quake is really, really outstanding. More meaningful words to follow, but I think that is an excellent development of Doom, where Doom is a game about position and kind of weapon management and exploring this, but Quake it's really all about space. It's all about tricking the player, thinking like, oh, now you know how to deal with these monsters. Now we're going to muck about with your perceptions of 3D space, and I think a lot of people focused on the deathmatch aspect of that and the online stuff, but I think the way it plays with space is really clever. It's the kind of thing I like about games like Antichamber and things like that. really confound what you think is true about a physical space. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so
just when you say antechamber, that's an interesting choice of a game which I absolutely would not put in front of someone new.
No, I wouldn't even put it in front of myself again.
I think it's
so hard.
It's great. Like, I really enjoyed it, but I think you need to be literate in games at that point and understand, certainly understand first-person genre in something about puzzle-solving games to even get why it's so clever. And I get that folk will bounce off of it and maybe not enjoy it. But just the whole playing with Euclidean geometry where you can walk around in a circle, but then the whole room changes behind you. That will mean nothing.
I think I need an upgraded brain to play Antechamber. I felt disabled by the time I'd finished playing it. Like, it just felt like profoundly stupid. Like I was never going to get it. It just requires a different level of literacy. In the same way, something like Fez is another one that requires a different type of understanding of, like, it's very big on like symbols and codes and hiding things that would previously be decoration. And those are hard games for those reasons, because you're trying to train your brain to work in a different way.
Yeah. I bounced off of Fez, actually.
I bounced off it too, because I don't want to learn things.
Well, I don't think it was even that you really learn things. That, for me, is like the example of a bad puzzle design, where it is just deliberately obtuse and obscured. And so there's a great difficulty in understanding it, but actually it's not engaging in any way. It didn't engage me in any way. It didn't like lead me up to wanting to know that, all these little symbols in the background, that's actually like a type of Morse code. And if you decode that and go over to this other unrelated part of the world, you can, unlock another piece of the puzzle. It wasn't satisfying in the way like a game, The Witness. Puzzles in that I found completely engrossing and engaging.
I think where Fez falls down is it never made me feel clever for solving the puzzles. In a way that something like Portal, or I haven't played The Witness, but something like Portal or The Swapper, or I'm trying to think what else, or Braid. Whenever you didn't get that eureka moment, I've solved this now. Mm-hmm. I'm smart. I'm very smart. And Fez, like, I think I solved that. It wasn't quite a direct cause and effect relationship.
Yeah.
But it's on the list, so we can cover that in Game Club someday.
Yes.
But it's one I would like to play through that with Jess and be like, we need to figure this shit out together, because I'm just too stupid for it, quite frankly. Okay, so yeah, how long have we been talking? Oh, well over an hour. Yeah, okay. So to bring it to some kind of close, before we then just start, playing games and talking about them, like every other bloody podcast, or like every other two-person combative podcast called Split Screen. Mm-hmm. What one game, if you could only like play one game off your pile of shame, the one that you think you're most ashamed to admit publicly that you have not played and or completed, what would that game be? And if you've got more than one, like, I'll allow you to have up to three, since you're on the spot. There's no time to prepare.
So we've covered one already, which would be the first Half-Life. I would then add on to that, I've not played any of the Mass Effect games, and I own the first two. At some point, I bought them. And I feel like those are seminal games that have, again, influenced a lot of what's come after. And I want to understand where those comparisons and references come from. That's it. Oh, no, actually, here's one more. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
So you picked two BioWare games?
Yeah. You know what? Okay. I don't think I've played any BioWare games at all. But I think I'd enjoy them, as opposed to, like, I've not played a Final Fantasy game. I know that I wouldn't really enjoy that. But everything that I enjoy in, like, the Fallout series is all the character dialogues, interactions, and that, from what I understand, is really where BioWare's strengths are.
Mm-hmm. I think those are both really good choices. I mean, I have played those. And I think Knights of the Old Republic, like, I have played this in the original Xbox. I've actually never completed Knights of the Old Republic, but I have got to the final boss, and I was like, well, I know what's going to happen. We'll kill him, the Star Wars team will play, and the game will end. So I never felt the need to complete it. But I remember it fondly. I think for me, I think Dark Souls is a big one for me. I've only got the furthest I got in Dark Souls was I got through the asylum, tanned the demon in a oneer, like haha, this isn't that bad. And then I went into a graveyard and just got stabbed to death in seconds. So I would like to play that one again. I feel like that's having not played that is something I should really get around to doing. There's so many I haven't played that are vaguely shameful. I think I would really like to play Metal Gear Solid 3, which I do own. I've played 1, 2, and 4, but I haven't played Snake Eater. I mean, I played that a little bit. I kind of bounced off that.
I'd say though, if you've played, because the whole part of the gaming literacy thing is your reference points. You mentioned earlier about Guacamelee. There's no point playing Guacamelee if you've played any of the Metroid games, or if you've played Shadow Effect, which was like another
Shadow Complex.
Shadow Complex was another kind of good, strong example of that genre. If you've played most of the Metal Gears other than 3, you'll still enjoy it, and it's my favorite of the series by far. But you're not going to get anything new from it. There's not an angle that hasn't really been explored a little bit fundamentally. There's nothing different in it. Whereas, the jump to Metal Gear 5 is like the jump from some of the previous or the latest Zeldas, like Skyward Sword. The jump to Breath of Wild is a step change for them.
And it's a totally different, it's got the same non-linearity.
Yep,
it's probably good. I think
both have horses, both are open world, both involve tricking enemy AI out of their patrol.
They're hard-earned trinkets.
Oh yeah, that too.
And I think there's definitely games that I want to play, but those two stand out as ones I probably should have played. And a third one's probably Grim Fandango, I think.
Yeah, also on my list.
But again, it's on the list. But I have played Secret of Monkey Island and its sequel, so it's not like I have no experience in that genre. It could be something like Baldur's Gate 2, actually, because I have played some of the later BioWare ones, but I haven't really played any kind of Dungeons and Dragons-y type stuff. I mean, you could say Knights of the Old Republic is kind of an advanced D&D, but it's not really. The numbers are all hidden. Like I don't have a clue what some of the stats do in Baldur's Gate, and that's what I think would be interesting and educating about playing it, because the idea of Dungeons and Dragons has always intrigued me. I would love to get into that in more of a role-playing fun, hanging out with friends sense.
Yeah, same here. Because if you're tracing back the lineage of games, it has to go back to Dungeons and Dragons at some point.
So and this is where it's interesting you talk about literacy, because I haven't played much Final Fantasy, but I have completed and really enjoyed Lost Odyssey, and I have completed and really enjoyed Chrono Trigger, which are similar games, and I've played a lot of like Super Mario RPG and things like that. So I think I could think of a third one that I should really play. That's a better choice than like Baldur's Gate. Is Yoshi's Island.
Okay.
I have played very, very little of Yoshi's Island, which is meant to be a really seminal platformer. I like platform games, so there's no reason I shouldn't play that. That's pretty shameful.
Cool.
You played Yoshi's Island?
Nope. Don't even know what the hell it is.
Super Mario World 2?
Yeah, yes.
You don't know what it is?
No. I've heard of it,
Christ.
but I assumed is it just a...
Yeah. Look it up.
Okay. Read a book.
Yeah.
God damn it, get educated.
Yeah, forget gaming literacy. Do your actual literacy. Get on Wikipedia. But I think it'll be good to play through the massive list of about 20 to 30 games, and then think about through the context of, did I learn something new from playing this?
Yeah.
What was interesting about it, or if it was so totally formulaic, why is that a bad thing? Why did it fail to pique our curiosity?
So shall we pick a game? Shall we commit?
No,
Okay.
Absolutely not, because what will happen is we'll just end up playing something else.
Yeah, fair enough.
Or if we don't follow up on this for any reasonable length of time, then people will start second guessing. So I want to keep it a surprise.
But in 2 years, how will people find out whether or not we did anything when we record the next podcast? Is what I mean.
Only time will tell. Because we used to do that with Cast Iron, where we try and say what we're doing next time, and then for whatever reason, we'd end up not covering that. So I think it's better just to keep the listener in suspense.
Cool. Well, I just stifled a yawn, so I think we're at the end of the podcast, Alan.
No, I'm so sorry. Isn't it? I'm 9 hours ahead of you.
Yeah, it's 11:30 a.m. here.
It is 8:30 p.m. here.
Crikey.
Well, I'm glad we're back. It's good. It's good to cast a pod again.
It is. I'll figure out how to edit on the new software I've got, and it will be released at some point. That's a completely pointless statement, because if anyone's listening to it, then obviously I did that. Anyway, we're done.
Well, you've set yourself up for success.
How do we end these things?
If you liked listening to this, you can find more of our stuff on split-screen.net. You can also find us on Twitter. I am at AGBear, and you are at CP Wilson.
Yeah, can't tell you the last time I used Twitter, but you'll find the thing.
But you can find us there. You might not find anything interesting, but you'll find us there. We do have a split screen Twitter, but I think we should probably get rid of that because we retweet our own features. Yeah, we'll just kill it. Fuck it. Yeah. What else can you?
And they can also
if
go
you like
to,
that,
also
you
go
can
to
go to
5out10magazine.com, and you will find lots of issues on there that you can enjoy.
Yeah, that's basically the tip jar for this. The 5 out of 10 back catalogue is good. I'd recommend buying the whole thing, but you can take it one collection at a time. And if you like the sound of my voice, you can also listen to the heavy metal podcast Cast Iron, which I record with Lewis Clark sporadically. Hopefully we'll get Craig on for the infamous Metallica Saint Anger episode soon, which we totally have to do.
Such a good album. Such a great, underrated album.
Such a turd. We're going to have a really good episode on that. It's going to be it's going to be one for the ages.
Excellent. How do we end this, Alan?
we just say thanks for listening, and then we just shut up. I think we just stop talking.
Thanks for listening.